Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to Friday. It is time for the Ham Radio Outlet Shack Chat. I am your host, Katie, WY7YL. Welcome to my shack here in Sundance, Wyoming. Looks like we've already got some folks joining us here today. I'm going to say hello to Wayne, one of our regulars. Hi, Wayne. As I put on our description for today's show, I bringing my friend Chip, who's an antenna guru on. So, Wayne, we're going to do our best to turn you also into a guru. I try to, I talk to Chip about antennas a lot, and he just knows so much. And what I love when I talk to him about stuff is, I don't feel bad when I ask what are probably dumb questions or I feel like, but he's always like, no, it's always a good question. And it gets you going there. Hey, there's our friend Chuck from ABR. Hi, Chuck. Thanks for joining us here. And who else we got? Leonardo's here from 9 Alpha Land. Hello. I love it when there's our first DX of the day. Well, today is the last Friday of August. Can you believe it? It's just amazing. And well, I'll let you guys know, I do have an announcement for you, but you're going to have to stay tuned until the end of the show to hear it. So make sure you hang on to the end. But I know that won't be a problem because I know you guys are going to be enjoying hearing about all kinds of antenna maintenance and new things and all kinds of things to do here with our antennas. There's Red. Hi, Red. And Ted. Oh, there's my friend Scotty. Hi, Scotty. And we've got Mariano's here. And look at that. There is the better half. Mrs. Margelli's here. Hi, Janet. From our HRO Anaheim store. Yay. And there's Greg and Judy. Hi, guys. Nice to see you here. And Jyoti from India is one of our regulars. And Lee says he's goofing off at work. Aren't you always goofing off at work, Lee? Well, again, welcome everybody. If you are logging in after the fact, thank you so much for joining us here on the Ham Radio Outlet Shack Chat. I'm your host, Katie WY7YL. This week, we're going to be talking all about antennas. So if you do have questions during the show, feel free to post them in the comment section and we'll do our best to address them. And again, if you hang around to the end, I've got an announcement for you. So you'll just have to hang out to the end to find out what I want to tell you about. So there's Bob popping in here as well up in Missouri. And good point. And hopefully everybody who was down in the path of Hurricane Laura is doing well. And there's Tom up in Mass and also our friend in India. And there's Marty. Hi, Marty. Okay. And Kathy. Okay. Now, enough of that. I'll get back to saying hello to everybody here shortly. It's time for the guest of honor to join us because you guys are here to see what Chip has to tell you all about antennas. So with that, welcome to my friend Chip Margelli, K7JA. Yay!
Hi, everybody. Good to see you all. And thanks for having me on here, Katie. It's I think there are going to be quite a number of folks doing antenna maintenance in the center part of the United States with the horrible storm that has gone through there. Laura was not kind and a lot of terrible damage. And, we're wishing our very best to everybody in the path of that storm and hope your antennas made it. And if not, maybe you'll pick up a tip or two here if you have power to watch. But,
yeah, let's hope so.
We're thinking of you down there.
Absolutely. All right. So perfect. And actually, Ken said he just put up the Comet CHA 250B. And as a matter of fact, Ken, that is on our list of antennas to talk about today. So just stay tuned and we will bring that one up shortly. So again, we thought, it's that time of the year. There's a few things happening. One is, I don't know if it's just because of COVID or it's just people finally are interested, but there's a lot of new hams out there. And we see a lot of people commenting in a variety of different places, plus phone calls to our stores saying, I'm a new ham and, I have no idea what to do about my first antenna. And by the way, I may have limited space or I'm only on VHF or maybe HF with a 2x2 lot I can use. I mean, there's so many different variables and obviously we can't cover them all. I mean, I suppose we could, but we'd probably be here till next Tuesday.
At least.
So, so we're going to limit it down. And then of course, even though it is the end of August, it's really it's rolling into fall, and that means it's time to start thinking about getting prepared for the winter. But I'm not sure which topic you wanted to start with this afternoon. So I'm going to let you pick what to talk about first.
Well, gosh, you made a good point there. We're at the end of August, and the weather is hot. People are sweltering. Their air conditioning may have broken, but boy, up in the northern realm, folks are thinking about, gosh, we're going to see snow pretty soon. In Alaska, they start seeing what they call termination dust about this time of year. Termination dust being the dust that falls from the sky, causing the termination of all the college students that were working in Alaska through the summer. But it's time for antenna work, and now is the time to do it, because when the weather goes bad, you'll look outside and says, it's too windy, it's too rain, it's too cold, right, and it doesn't get done. And then halfway through the winter,
Yeah, so and I've shared pictures of Dwayne having to walk out through the back in 4 feet of snow to deal with antenna issues. And granted, that wasn't because we hadn't prepared for it. It was just, a bad winter storm. But,
but you've got a nice 6-meter beam up there in your station that has made it through a couple of winters now.
It has, and it's doing great. So
guess what? I built it.
Yeah, exactly.
I made it extra stout for Wyoming winters. That wind up there is pretty darn brutal, and it never ends.
Yeah, we had some really bad wind last night, and hail, and like 60-mile-an-hour winds, and of course, where was I but on the interstate? So that was a lot of fun. Mom and I were driving home and pulled off for a little bit, and came home and looked around. Everything was okay. So I was like, phew.
Yeah. Well, you're quite right. Well, we can start about maybe a little bit of pre-winter preparation and hide and kneel. Go Huskies, yes, and for everybody up north, I am in Blue Friday blue for the Seahawks.
Right.
Hope we have a season. There are some basic things that you can do, even if your antenna system is kind of looking okay. You might want to. I mean, there are the obvious things. Run your eyes up and down the coax, see if it's gotten caught someplace. Maybe you need to tape it up or something. Those are very obvious. Some other things you might want to think about, get into the Wayback Machine just a little bit and think about last winter, last spring, when the wind was really blowing. What were you worried about? Did you look up at your beams up topside and go, oh dear, is it gonna make it? Is it gonna make it?
Right.
There are some simple things that you can do, so you might sleep a little better at night. For example, if you have a beam of some sort up on your tower, and maybe the boom is kind of long, and maybe you didn't put a back brace on it, any kind of support for its back. Well, if you have a way to get down, or get the beam down to someplace where you can reach, consider putting a simple back brace on it. This can be as simple as maybe some 5/16 Dacron cord, and you go about 2/3 of the way or 3/4 of the way out on each side and tie it on, and then maybe a simple U-bolt with a couple of those little cross pieces on it to give a place for the knot, and just bring the Dacron cord up, like this, this, and just give the boom a little bit of support. You don't want to do it up so it starts to do a parabola or a U shape of any kind, but a little bit of support will damp lateral movement as well as some of the up and down stuff, and it might give you a little more peace of mind. And Dacron survives UVs really well, so that's a real simple thing you can do.
Yeah.
And also, if you've had any kind of intermittence, you probably need to be looking at get up there, if you can get access to it, get the element tips, and way out at the tip, try to twist. And if you can twist, you've probably got a loose connection. Maybe a hose clamp has busted or something like that, and you can go in and fix it. But go to each element and give that tip section a twist, and it shouldn't move. And I mean, you don't have to get out there with a wrench, but if it's such that you can rotate that easily, then you've got a problem and you want to address it.
Yeah, I'm guessing that also if it's loose, that means that there's very likely or could be water in there if you've had rain. Would that Is that possible to get in there?
A distinct possibility, and that is very capable of making that connection point. Say when you have two telescoping pieces of aluminum, you have the potential there for it almost to become a capacitor. Certainly an arcing point, because the voltage is going up the further you go out on the element.
Right.
And so that's the time to do something about it. And if you're going to do something about it, you just don't go out there and you and crank the hose clamp to see if it's broken. You need to pull it out, and we can talk about that right now. You need to do some cleaning up on that, because if water has gotten in there, that connection point is already compromised, and you really need to fix it. So what I like to do on a piece of telescoping aluminum, here's a typical piece that you might have, and you look at this thing, and it it looks clean and all, and probably would make an okay connection. But I like to go at it and do some cleanup work. First off, with a piece of fine grit sandpaper.
Oh, son of a gun. Okay.
Sandpaper. If you lose anything off of it, it is it's an insulator, yes, but it is not something that's going to rust. If you get the idea of using steel wool, that is a mega bad idea, because microscopic pieces of the steel now get into two telescoping sections of aluminum, or aluminium in British areas. And if you think about that, those are dissimilar metals. Steel's going to try to rust, and now you're in bad shape. So now I've hit it with the sandpaper, and the next thing I do is I come at it with Scotch-Brite instead of
we got one of those.
Yeah, Scotch-Brite pads. You can get them at hardware stores, or probably and get it at grocery stores.
Right.
And find a nice stiff Scotch-Brite pad, or a box of them, and go at it like you would on a tough bit of a tough stain on a pan.
Sure.
And voila.
Wow. Now you just did all that while we were talking. That was that's the difference.
Just
Holy
rotating.
cow.
And now this is extremely smooth. You can feel a very distinct difference when you compare. And now this is ready for being shoved into the next largest size. Now, before you do that, you don't just want to shove it in. You need to protect the connection. The most popular, the best known protectant in the ham industry is called Penetrox, Penetrox, and that is a goo. It's like a grease, and you put that onto the connection, and then slide the tube back into the proper dimension, close down the hose clamp, and then wipe off the excess. And what this is doing more than anything else, it is sealing water out from getting into that connection. It's not making the connection itself. You don't want to be doing that. If you use Penetrox to any kind of a goober to make the connection, you're going to get arcing and all kinds of problems. So you need a nice tight fit. You need to have it properly sealed in there, and the Penetrox will do a good job. Other materials you can get, something like Noalox, which is used for, in the electrical industry for copper to aluminum connections to keep dissimilar metals problems. And you can also get something like Dow Corning high vacuum silicone grease. It's kind of spendy. And yes, silicone is an insulator, but the little nodules get out of the way. So that's what a lot of folks do as well. But the Penetrox is great stuff. It actually comes in many antenna kits that are supplied in the ham industry. So it's really very helpful. But by all means, anytime you have a loose connection like that, you're going to have to worry about water having gotten in there, and it's only going to get worse unless you get in and shine up that connection.
Right. And here it is on our website, and I have placed a link. Oh, I need to move my mouse in the right place. That would be a good start. This is on the website, but both, if you're watching on Facebook or YouTube, I've got links to the to this, as well as the other things that Chip will be sharing with you today. So you don't have to worry about it while you're watching to try to scribble notes down on all these things. I've got them shortcutted for you. I think Wayne might have a good question based on what you're talking about, since you're talking about putting things together. So Wayne is asking if her different answers regarding where you should put a 1-to-1 choke, at the antenna feed point or at the transceiver. Oh,
Okay. Well, we're talking about devices that are being used for somewhat different purposes, sort of under the same umbrella.
okay.
Very simply, Wayne is asking about where to put a balancing device first off.
Okay.
And obviously, when you're feeding the antenna with coax, that needs to go right at the feed point. And what it can be a coil of coax, and you need to use the right turns. There are several references on the internet about how to build one of these coils, because they are resonant and they have a pronounced peak in their choking influence at certain frequencies. And so you need to put the right number of turns. Otherwise, yeah, it'll work, but it won't work as well as it might otherwise work. Secondly, keeping in mind you want that as close as possible to the feed point, you also want the choke and everything, between it and the feed point, which shouldn't be very long, but you want that choke insulated from the boom. You do not want it taped to the boom, because if you think about it, you're going to get an impedance bump. There's going to be a proximity effect, capacitive coupling to the boom, and that sharp resonance that gives you the great choking is going to go away, or at least it's going to shift someplace, and now your 20-meter coil might work on 15, and that's not what you're trying to do. So I'll use a small stone or a piece of wood or any insulating material, and I'll tape that between the coil and the boom. If you don't have to make a coil out of it, you can also make it out of ferrites, and there are a number of designs on the internet that use ferrite beads or ferrite donuts, depending on how you want to build it. But again, that needs to be insulated from the boom.
Gotcha.
All that being said, you may still want to put a 1-to-1 choke with PL259s on each end of it down in your shack, in case for whatever reason there is common mode current pickup on the coax as it comes down. You can also get noise pickup, and there's nothing wrong at all, other than the very, very, very slight loss in however much coax is used for this. There's nothing wrong with putting that in the shack. I had an RFI problem in the shack where I was having just squirrely things happen on FT8 and things like that. I was getting dumped, and I had put up a very casual vertical antenna with no precautions against this, and it came back to bite me. So I just came down here, and I had extra coax, so I kind of remembered how many turns to do for 40 meters where the problem was, made a choke, just put it in line right where the coax came into the house, and poof, problem went away.
Okay.
Now that was a Band-Aid, but it was a very effective Band-Aid, and it can certainly work. So you definitely can use it in two places, but by all means, you want to have some way of getting unbalanced coax to balanced antenna, and you need one at the feed point.
Our comedian in the group here. I love how you say you just, you casually threw together a vertical. It, like, for those of you guys who don't maybe follow Chip already, his idea of relaxation after work is to go out in the backyard and build a new antenna just because. So
it's a character flaw. Yeah.
All right. Well, hopefully that answered your question, Wayne.
Yeah. And yes, I see all the posts about no steel wool. Absolutely no steel wool. That's your big enemy. Now, other things you obviously need to do outside, if you have any coax connectors or anything like that, you need to be looking at them. You may have been noticing an intermittent connection, and maybe it isn't the antenna. If you've eliminated the antenna connections, you might want to go looking and see if you have a barrel connector and see if something has come loose, or you take a look at it and, ooh, that tape doesn't look like it should. And you open it up and the connector is all yucky, and oh boy, what are we going to do? So when you get the problem fixed, it kind of depends on how badly the connector was compromised. But if when you get that fixed, you want to do the right kind of a protection job on it. And this will involve products like Coax Seal Obviously, black electrical tape can get into the formula. Probably the first wrap should always be a good tight wrap of black electrical tape. And on the last couple of turns, don't do it as tightly so that it doesn't kind of stretch out and try to do the Irish pennant thing. But then over that, you put another sealing tape called coax seal.
Right.
And what this does, this is like a silly putty or a clay, and you wrap it all around, all the way past the end of your black tape, and then kind of form it, mold it a little bit so that it forms an airtight seal.
Right.
And that's a great way to protect. There's another product called Coax Wrap that will.
I didn't pull that one up.
Didn't pull that one up. Coax Wrap, which is a self-amalgamating tape, and it's sort of the same thing. It's not a dough. It's literally a tape, and you wrap.
Right.
And then again, do this a little bit, but it wants to stick to itself, and then it forms to itself. And of course, we have this at Ham Radio Outlet on our website, and it's great stuff. And I mean, it's used for things like plumbing repairs.
Right. So, I think we talked about it on another show, and we were talking antennas, and, I know from playing around with it, it's, it's obviously thicker than just electrical tape. So does it have some kind of insulation, or is it just that's how it's, the chemical compounds or whatever make it do what it does?
Well, kind of both. I mean, it's got great electrical properties, and obviously at that point you're not talking about RF, but it's a great insulator. But it also it mostly is just really great at keeping the elements out, both air and water, and that's what you're trying to do on a connection like this.
Yeah.
And Wayne is asking about.
I think we need to order a case.
Yeah, I think so. Wayne's asking about electrical grease. That's what we were talking about a minute ago. Was the Penetrox or the Noah Locks or the Dow Corning stuff? So
so that was this one here.
And the electrical grease is again not the thing that makes the connection. It's the thing that keeps weather away from your connections. Right. What I always do is at that point where you've made the connection to the nuts and bolts at the feed point of the antenna, I use the goober, the Penetrox or whatever on for where I'm putting the screws on and things like that, and tighten them down. And then what I do is I have many tubes of the clear silicone sealant like you would use for an aquarium or something like that. It's pure silicone, and I just goober the heck out of the whole area, so there's no possibility of anything getting in. And I'll go back to connections 3, 4, 5 years later, and the metal is just as shiny as the day I put it up. It's just it's wonderful stuff, and so that's a good way to go. So now we did antenna connections and coax connections. We're trying to keep the weather out. That is absolutely the number one thing, and is to keep the weather out. Now, somebody is pointing out here also about tree limbs. I was just about to get to that.
Oh, good. I was gonna say, Bill went out and did some work out there, and I know you just did some at home too. So,
well, yeah, I've been doing a fair amount of it actually, and yes, that's an extremely important point. You need to look up the tree branches have grown, and they may be somewhere in proximity to the very ends, the ropes or the wires themselves of a dipole antenna, or if you have a guide tower, the guy wires themselves may be in peril, and you need to look at literally the health of the tree. Is the tree likely to fall over? Do you need to do something about that, or do you need to take out some limbs? Because if the limb comes down, it can hit the dipole and break it, and it won't break it down low. It'll break it up at the top of the tower. Murphy's Law guarantees that.
Oh, well, of course.
And but this can be a really serious issue. Many years ago, up on Foulweather Bluff in Washington, W7RM and W6RR were next door neighbors, and I was responsible for a lot of the construction work at W6RR's place and did a lot of operation from W7RM. Well, sometime in the late 70s, if I'm not mistaken, they had a twister come through. And twisters are fairly unusual in Western Washington, but this was a good one. And it came through, destroyed some of the Hood Canal floating bridge, and came right up to Foulweather Bluff and literally flattened the northernmost quarter mile of the bluff, and all the trees are coming down.
Gosh.
And W6RR had several 200-foot towers that I was quite proud of how pretty they were. But trees came down. One tower had 7 trees across various guys.
Oh my gosh.
This tower was in peril. Well, W7RM was there. 6RR was down here. It was the late Gordon Marshall of Marshall Industries, and he spent winters down in California, as you can imagine. And so Rush, Drake W7RM got out with a backhoe and literally started lifting trees off and trees off and trees off. And by gosh, that tower came up, and it came up to. Boy, wow. Was I proud of that construction job.
I bet you were.
It just shows that if you do it right the first time, you can get lucky, but you need to be careful of the branches, most definitely, and just literally go walk your property, even if it's a city lot. You know, if you've got something tied to a tree or something like that, see what's going on with the tree, see if the branches need to be cut back a little bit, and do it.
Yeah.
Looks
like Robin had an issue with it when he was tracking the ISS, so I guess Robin was out trimming the hedges there. Darn it. So Kevin just is trying to confirm. So you use a dielectric grease and then seal the connector?
I'm not sure which connector we're talking about. If we're talking about a barrel connector on a PL259, you can put silicone insulating grease or something in there and then tighten the connector. If you're going to an antenna, you goober it up with the Noalox or the Penetrox rather, and then tighten it up. Absolutely. What goes on top of it is silicone sealant, not the grease.
Gotcha. Okay.
So that's what we do. That we're just
the word of the day today is goober.
Goober, that's right, goober.
It pretty much covers all of it, I would say.
Oh, it does. And,
we all know what you mean. Yes.
Yeah.
It's a messy job sometimes.
But you got to do it, and you're gonna go through a lot of things. You know what? And something else that a lot of folks have used over the years, there was some. What's the name of it? It's a 3M product that is sort of like a tar, and they'll put that as a final coat over taping jobs and things on coax connectors. But that's a pretty severe step for doing that kind of thing. Should I try to HG for Parachute Mobile? Keep in mind.
He does Parachute Mobile, so he's out there usually with his I think he's got the FT3DR. He's got some great videos when he's out jumping out of the plane and talking on the radio.
Well, you know, Ham Radio Outlet has some nice 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 element Yagis that you can do.
There you go.
You know, kind of hold it in your lap as you're coming down. The thing about that is, if you're parachuting, your line of sight to a lot of people, and there are no obstructions. You really don't need to get very esoteric about the antenna. If you have instead of the little tiny rubber ducky like this, if you have something longer, like one of the Commodore Diamond antennas, that's going to be more than enough. More than enough to use. I mean, you just don't even think about going more than that. It's just too much higher.
Yes, you'd have to hold and aim you don't need to do that. From up there, like you said, you're just working whoever you can, and obviously you've proven you can do it. So,
well, yeah, and if you think about it,
he's pushing the distance, and I'm pushing the distance envelope.
Yeah, well, the thing is, when you're up there, if you've put out any publicity, you're going to have a pile up of stations, and there's going to be capture effect, and you're not going to get down, I don't think, to lower levels of signals. Now, I've never jumped out of a perfectly good airplane myself, but if you put out any publicity, you think about how much your drop time is and how many stations are waiting and how many QSOs you can run. Boy, I don't know. It's what you want to do is put out the word that the locals hang on, and for the first 30 seconds of after I stop screaming, then you let the distant stations come on through the pile up, and then as we're going the last 1,000 feet, everybody jump in. I don't know.
Marty's just tape an arrow antenna to your foot.
Yeah, there you go. That's right.
That'd be interesting when landing, though.
Well, yeah. I'm not
Oh,
going to go
goodness.
anywhere near any of this.
No. All right, moving on now.
Moving right along. And I suppose another thing we could talk about is a lot of folks have asked as we're getting here towards the antenna season, or the summer season. Gosh, I got my license over the summer. I took a class. I got my license. What's the best antenna for me to use? And of course,
Right.
you know, if you ask a general question like that on Facebook or something, you're going to get a lot of admonitions of, well, blah, 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 from all these experts saying, well, first off, you didn't ask a very specific question, and then it goes downhill from there. Look, we've all been there. We've all been making our first contact, buying our first radio, buying our first antenna. We've all been there. The truth is, though, that you need to figure out, well, what am I going to do? And especially if you've gotten, say, a general class license over the summer, you know, your handy-talkie and mobile radio stuff is all well and good. And yes, you can attend to that, but you've got an opportunity to get on HF. And in the summer, you've got an opportunity in the summertime to do some antenna work that you might not be able to do in the winter. And so you probably want to think about, well, what's my first HF antenna that I can do reasonably in this amount of time? And of course, the answer to that then depends on how much time you have, how much space you have, and what your budget is.
Right.
The tried and true wire dipole will do a lot of good. You work tons of contacts on a wire dipole. Lots of manufacturers make them a high gain, MFJ, any number, Alpha Delta have a lot of antennas that will do one band or multiple bands, and those will get you on the air. Now, those, of course, require a horizontal footprint. Maybe they'll fit on a 60 by 100 lot, but maybe not on a 50 by 50 lot. And of course, then there's a matter of restrictions for height and things like that you really can't get into very much on when talking about dipoles. If you have the ability to get something up, get anything up, it's better than nothing, obviously.
Right, absolutely.
But these dipoles are full-sized antennas. They're no compromise, and the higher the better is a fairly safe recommendation unless you're using it for local network on, say, 80 meters when you want to shoot at the clouds and have local coverage.
Right.
Now, going beyond that, somebody mentioned the CHA 250B vertical antenna doesn't require any horizontal radial elements to make it work. That's a good way to go. A lot of folks also use some of the rotary dipoles. Comet has the CHV5X, Diamond has the HFV5, High Gain has the TH1. Those can go on a pole or something like that. You use them for an afternoon, and then you pull them down at the end of the day, and when the neighbor knocks on the door, what's that thing in your backyard? You look around, whoa, what thing in my backyard?
I don't see anything.
And so those are really great. You can also take them to a park, and you take them to the beach. You can do things with them and have some fun with them for 3 or 4 hours, and then pack them up. And it hasn't been a large amount of hassle. We deploy these things at Dayton in 15 or 20 minutes, and so this isn't a big deal. For home use, also there's a whole category of antennas called magnetic loop antennas.
Right.
And magnetic loop antennas are very popular. They typically are 3 or 4 or 5 feet. Good example is the MFJ 1786 that works on 30 through 10 meters, or the MFJ 1788, which works on 40 through 15. There are a number of these products that have been out there for a number of years. Probably the most
small.
popular.
They're only 3 feet in diameter, 36 inches.
Can they work is always the big question. Well, I'm here to tell you they can. The first antenna that really came out that got a lot of popularity was the ISOLOOP manufactured by AEA, which is no longer in existence. The principal's all retired. And the AEA ISOLOOP was about a 3 foot, looked like a piece of thick copper flashing with a big capacitor in the middle. And very compact. And so back in 1994, as a stunt, I shipped mine down to Puerto Rico to NP4A, Nancy Papa 4 America, and told Pedro down there to put the thing up or hold it for me, and we'll put it up on a tripod on his roof. And I'm going to
Yeah.
work sweepstakes contests. So I go down there, and we put the thing up on about a, I don't know, 15-foot piece of pipe on a tripod on his roof. And, it took about 20 minutes to do and come down and start firing it up in the shack. And I figured I'd work 500 contacts, have some rice and beans and some Puerto Rican coffee and just call it a fun weekend.
Yeah.
Well, about half hour before the contest, I got on 15 meters CW and made some noise. And K1AR, John Doerr, came back to me in New Hampshire. And I asked John, I said, John, how loud am I? And his answer was loud enough. Long story short, instead of 500 contacts, I made something like 1,408 contacts.
Good grief.
And I set the all-time low power record for sweepstakes CW, and it stood for 22 years.
Right. Until recently, I know.
Until some W2GD went down to the Virgin Islands and stole it from me. But I
remember. You're going to have to go back and try to reclaim it. That's all. You and Janet will have to plan a vacation.
Yeah, I've got to talk to MFJ about that. But,
yeah.
But in doing my tests on this ISOLOOP antenna, which is very similar to the MFJ, I had a 4-element Yagi for 20 meters up, and I compared the ISOLOOP to the 4-element Yagi on 20 meters, which was the ISOLOOP's worst band. And I, when the beam was pointing at a particular station, it was about average 3S units better than the ISOLOOP, which was down at maybe 15 feet off my roof on a tripod. But curiously enough, when I rotated the beam 90 degrees off the side, now the ISOLOOP was 2 or 3S units louder than the beam because of the pattern of the beam. So I'm doing this calculus in plotting my strategy, and I thought, well, my competition in the Caribbean has got 6-element Yagis, and he's going to be pointing at the East Coast. Well, if he's 30/9 in Pittsburgh, and I'm only 15/9 in Pittsburgh, I'm still loud enough in Pittsburgh.
Absolutely.
But how loud am I in San Diego compared to him? I'm a lot louder. So I figured we'll split the East Coast. I win the West Coast. I win the contest, and I beat this guy in the Virgin Islands by 100 contacts.
Wow.
So you need to think about what you're going to do. But yes, these magnetic loops, and there are all kinds of them out there. I think there's a Chameleon, and there's the Alex loop, and all these different products, and they do indeed work. It's not hocus pocus. It's solid engineering, but these work in the magnetic realm, and they work just great. And they are efficient. They are very pointy. They are high Q antennas, and so you have to retune them frequently. But the fact that they are high Q is a good thing. It means they are efficient. You can't run power with most of them. There are some monster antennas you see at Dayton that will take some power, but at 150 watts, there's over 7,000 volts on the tuning capacitor of some of these loops. So they have to be serious capacitors, and so you don't want to think about running 1,500 watts. But they do work. They work very, very well. The Mazzoni loops are very neat, and it's fun stuff. So you can get into loops and make a lot of noise, and theoretically you can put them away at the end of the day, or just leave them up. I don't know what people would think about them. Yeah, kind of depends on your environment.
Right. I think it was, sorry, I was going to say, I think when I was, I had the guys from SDR Play on, Steve Brightman and John Hudson, Andy and Mike, they were talking, a lot of people, when they're using the SDR Play receiver, that they're using mag loops for that. And that was kind of the first I had, kind of paid attention to it. And since then, I've learned a lot more people are using them. And I think, your description and even what you've done with it is really helpful, because
and MFJ,
you look at it and you think, how can that do anything? But wow.
MFJ actually has a receive loop that's the same size as the 1786 and 1788, and you can use it to null out local noise, and it's very effective. It is a killer shortwave listening antenna. It really, really plays. I mean, it just you wonder how the signals are getting into your radio. But if you think about it, for many years, some of the even modern sets, they had what they called a ferrite rod antenna, which is just some wire wrapped around the ferrite rod, and it's in the inside of the receiver. Yeah, you heard
Yeah.
stuff on it. Well,
Right.
this is that on significant steroids.
Right. Yeah. And here Michael's saying he's been using one for over 7 years because he's living where he rents. So making lots of great content. And that's it. An
Yeah,
antenna is better than no antenna. So when
well,
you
yeah,
find something that works, that's part of the, especially for the newer hams out there, you got to test until you find something that works for you. Sometimes,
well, yeah.
you
And
know,
even for someone like me, I've been, almost 6 decades in this hobby. It gets you that yes factor when you make a contact.
yeah,
And of course, with these magnetic loops, because they are efficient, you kind of get over that yes factor pretty soon. You go, well, that was easy.
right.
But kind of like after the first hour of that sweepstakes I was describing, I had 101 contacts in the log low power. I
Right.
definitely went yes.
Yeah.
So there's a big yes factor in there, and it's just amazing what you can do.
Yeah, that's great. So let's see. We had let me just make sure we have any questions here that have popped up while we've been chatting. Do.
And I'll respond to Don's comment here. Small loops are efficient. Yes, so are dummy load. No, dummy loads are very inefficient. They don't put out any signal if they're good.
Right.
Magnetic loops do put out. No, they're not an 8-element monoband Yagi at 200
Right.
feet sky, but they are surprisingly, stunningly more effective than you might think just looking at them. I mean, they do the contacts. I'll stand by them.
Yeah. Here's a great question. So Red lives in a 5-story condo, aluminum wall studs throughout the building and a brick facade. No antennas allowed outside. Will a mag loop work for me on HF?
Well, obviously, anything inside
It's
is a
gonna be
severe compromise.
Right.
And to some degree, also, depending on the power you're running, you need to be careful, very careful of the RF exposure limits that are in place for amateur radio. But again, compared to other antennas that you might consider, it's going to be at least as good as anything else.
Right.
It's tough. I mean, you start stringing a dipole around, the inside of an apartment or something like that, and you're asking for tying into every electrical circuit in the place, and you'll be talking to everybody's AM radios or God knows what. It's a little sporty. So yeah, the magnetic loop antenna, especially if you have the possibility at least of putting it out on the veranda,
Right.
You could do that out on your balcony. I did that for working satellites on 2 meters. I had some small beams when we lived in Japan, and I just took these things out and pointed them outward, and then when I was done, I brought them back inward. So that's always a slight possibility.
Yeah, I wanted to mention the compact antenna. I've had Dr. Jack Nielsen on the show.
Yes, absolutely.
Who invented this antenna, and we carry, and he's got different versions of them. One covers phone, one for the digital and CW, another one for the work bands. But it's only 46 inches tall. You just need that pad below. But you don't have to do much to it, and it works really well. And a lot of people use it in their attic, which obviously isn't quite the case for you. But if you check out Compact Antenna, go visit the website. I've put a link and even visit his site. He's got a lot of great information and on his videos too about the science of how he created this antenna. I mean, you look at it, you're thinking, how the heck does that thing do what it could do? But so it's an
excellent point. Yeah.
Yeah, it's another option for sure.
It is, and it's getting a lot of attention, and there are a lot of possibilities like that out there. Again, it very much depends on what you can do for either horizontal extent or vertical extent. The CHA 250B was just asked about again. And,
right. Yeah. Kevin was asking about that one.
Yeah. And it's, I'll put it in about the same category of efficiency as the magnetic loops, although on the low bands, I think it's going to be a little more effective. And again, so much depends on your foreground and how high you can get with some of these antennas. And so each installation is its own environment, and the antenna in its environment is the whole key. And what's going to be a reflector, what's going to absorb, what's going to get in the way, and what perhaps even is going to help. So that's
Yeah, it's a loaded question when somebody asks, what should my first antenna be? It's kind of, what should I get for my first HF rig? And that's a loaded question because there's just,
Mhm.
that's why when I'll get a message like that on Facebook, for example, and I always say, you know what, you need to give our store a call because that's what, our teams know. I mean, this is the type of questions they ask all the time because they know what questions to ask you to help figure it out with you. And a lot of times, they'll be able to help you narrow down to, one or two things, and then you can make your decision. But
Sure. Well, and here's another point. Stuart over in the UK pointed out that
mhm,
he wouldn't be on HF at all if he didn't have
right.
a magnetic loop antenna. Once you've gotten your feet under you a little bit in ham radio, this would be a great area of experimentation, I think, um, about beam forming. If you have one magnetic antenna that's radiating, why not put up two and then do some
Mhm,
experimentation with phasing them, either broadside or end fire in some way with delay lines of coax. And this is all um, in the antenna handbooks, and all you need to do is to substitute, say, a vertical antenna, quarter wave vertical antenna, and replace it with these magnetic loop antennas, and then follow
mhm,
the instructions on phasing. And you might very well be able to do some very interesting work with multiple antennas. It's just a very fun possibility for
right.
further experimentation. And it might be your thing in ham radios to see what you can do with the smallest antenna possible by taking advantage of existing knowledge in areas of phased antennas. It could be a
Right.
really, really fun enterprise.
And there is no shortage of books out there, written by all of the gurus, and of course, the classic, the ARL's antenna book. I mean, I'm looking over there. We've got a few of those, and of course, the handbook always has great information. And then there's specialized antenna books. I mean, there's just so much information available out there.
Yes, the ARL antenna book is a real classic. There are antenna compendia that are out there published by ARRL. One book that I found particularly compelling was HF Antennas for All Locations by
Mhm.
Les Moxon,
Yep.
G6XN, who is now a silent key. But he wrote the classic books about small antennas for a small garden, and how small can you make an antenna without losing 1 dB, 1 dB,
Right.
1 decibel being theoretically the smallest amount that you can hear. And they said, okay, how small can we go before you can hear the difference? And he had sections on phasing and folding back antennas and making them
Right.
compact, where to put coils, if you where to do other kinds of loading. Great book, HF Antennas for All Locations. I'm not even sure it's in publication anymore, but you might be able to find it in some places.
Yeah. There's another one. I think it's HF for small spaces.
Yes, excellent
There,
book.
That's another good. I'm looking over at, at all of our books over there trying to read the titles from here, but I know
Right.
that's a really helpful one. And, um, you know, as I've said before, I mean, you see photos from our yard, for example, and people think we have a big yard, and it really isn't that big. I wouldn't call this a small space. It's just an interesting layout that has worked for us to be able to put up the towers. But, you know,
True.
I'm married to
And,
an engineer who figured it all out. So,
and again, at the end of the day, you may find yourself resorting to a piece of number 14 wire,
yeah.
stretch this way to the garden, maybe make a right turn and come back this way, and then tie that through an LDG tuner or one
Hmm.
of the other antenna tuners like it.
Oh,
ICOM
yeah.
AH4 has been around for years,
Oh, yeah.
and
Yeah,
like that.
before we put the 100-foot tower up, our 160-meter, double bazooka we have from Radio Waves that went out to one corner of the yard, and then it scooted back up to kind of the front to the basketball hoop, and then somewhere else. I mean, because we just didn't have the space. Once we went up 100 feet, then we had a lot more, area to work with. But yeah, that sucker was kind of in all different directions, but it did the
And it
job.
worked.
It
Yeah,
did,
it
absolutely.
worked. And you will not find it described in any antenna text.
No.
Or if it is, they'll say, you really shouldn't do this. Well,
Yeah.
maybe I
Well,
shouldn't do it, but it's either I do this or I don't do anything at all.
Right.
Come on, ham spirit, give it a try. I mean, I
Yeah,
talked
the
to
worst thing that
guys.
happens is you don't make a contact or you can't hear anything. Well, then you reconfigure it and try again.
I talked to a guy in Japan many, many, many years ago on 15 meters using the proverbial wet string antenna. String in the backyard, maybe 6 feet off the ground. I went out with the hose, wet it down, and then sprinkled the table salt all along the end of it. Came running back inside before it dried out. And I worked one fellow in Japan from Tacoma, Washington,
Oh,
using a wet string antenna.
see?
So, whether or not that fits the definition of being efficient, it definitely put out a signal. It worked, and it had a big yes factor.
Exactly. That's what's cool. It's great. Robin's suggesting, there's the stealth antenna guide also. And I know there's a book out of, I believe the AORL also has another one of those on the stealth antennas. And there's a lot of, Marty mentioned earlier, he's got one decorated or looks like a sunflower. And I've seen some at some of the conventions that are actually been built to look like, garden art essentially.
Oh, yes, absolutely. From N6BT, you bet.
Yeah.
Yeah,
We know
Tom
about.
Schiller
We used
has
one of his
some-
antennas.
Yeah, what are you running? Well, I'm running a copper flamingo.
Yeah.
Say that again.
I totally need a flamingo antenna.
Do you think?
That would be cool.
Most definitely. And Robin Mosley, I definitely concur.
Yeah. Let's see. If there's anything else. 3 experts help to put up the unfed. They are very skeptical. Well, yep. See, it's okay to start off skeptical of your configuration, but give it a try.
Yeah, well, that's right. And going back for a moment to the ham that's owned, say, a technician whose primary interest initially is VHF. There are lots of good vertical antennas out there that are certainly much more have much more go juice than the little rubber ducky that's on a handheld. And even something small like the Comet GP3, and Diamond has several antennas the same size, they're maybe 4.5 feet tall or something like that. And
Right.
MFJ and High Gain, all these manufacturers have these antennas.
Yeah.
They deploy quickly for emergency work. You can take them to a park and use them for activity nights or VHF contests for roving. At home, you can put them up, and if you don't have an antenna restriction problem, you just ruggedize them as best possible. There are any number of ways you can extend your range beyond what it might otherwise be. If you live in an apartment and can't put up anything with omnidirectional coverage, hopefully you're pointing in the direction of interest, and maybe you could put up a small beam, like a Cushcraft 124WB comes to mind, and point it that direction. You'll get out further than you will with a single element. That's the definition of gain. But whatever you do, if you're putting it up for permanent use, follow all of the protocols for protecting those connections where they go into the feed point,
Right.
and sealing everything up. And if it's a quarter wave antenna, going back to one of the first questions, I think it was from Wayne, a quarter wave vertical antenna, depending on its radial structure, frequently the worst thing you can do is have quarter wave radials on it, because you tend to set up common mode current with that configuration. Moxon speaks to this. It's actually better to have a coil and then shorter radials. But putting that aside, it's not a bad idea to make a coil, an RF choke, and put that at the base of a vertical. You may find your vertical works better because now you don't have current flowing on the coax, and the coax is trying to act as an antenna. Well, if you got power coming, being radiated down your coax, that's power that isn't going into the vertical element. And so you might want to put an RF choke, just coil the coax at the base of the antenna, and you're going to find that works better. That's one thing that came to mind, and I just, oh gosh, I forgot to mention that at the time of that discussion.
Yeah. So, hey, Cal, and you guys up at the New Hampshire HRO who are watching, Bill wants to know if you've got the CHA 250 in stock up there. Looks like Bill wants to take a road trip. So you guys get in touch with each other and they'll take care of you. Here's a good question that just popped in. How about a wire antenna that performs well to cover 40, 20, and 17? He wants to take down his 80 meter doublet and replace it with a resonant 75 meter dipole for best performance and low loss, which will be in the front yard, and then put that 40, 20, and 17 in the backyard.
Ooh, boy.
Yeah.
Well, it's just a matter of remembering model numbers, which I probably would not be able to do off the top of my head.
Right.
But I think that High Gain has several antennas that include all of those bands. You could put a vertical antenna in the backyard, for example.
Okay.
Also, I think Alpha Delta and MFJ have dipoles or slopers that you could bring to bear there if you have some capability of raising it a little bit and doing the sloper or the invented V thing. And if you want to build your own, build a dipole literally with elements cut for those particular bands and just kind of separate them a little bit. Now, you'll probably have to do some trimming because the mutual coupling between each element to the other band elements will be in play. There's no question about it. But if you can do a dipole, do separate dipoles for each band, and people like Radio Waves have antennas that will cover a number of bands like this. Take a look at those, count out your bands and see what they have, and there probably is a Radio Waves dipole antenna out there that meets that particular responsibility.
Yeah. So Robin is John was the first one that asked it, and Robin's call sign isn't showing up here. He's Golf 1 Mike Hotel Uniform. So check out Robin and I vouch for him. He's a good friend of mine. So Golf 1 Mike Hotel Uniform, you can get his info on QRZ. And
Cool.
He is always playing around with antennas and all kinds of things. So he is.
Well, there's just always so much to learn. The final book has not been written on antennas.
No.
You read articles on a number of web pages from people that know their stuff, and it's all very interesting. A good example is Justin Johnson, G0KSC, Golf 0 Kilo Sugar Charlie.
Yep.
Was the originator of the LFA, the loop fed antenna, that is currently being manufactured by MFJ, among others, on contract. And these loop fed antennas, have really opened up a whole new view of antenna performance. Well, on his website, Justin also has a lot of comments on balance and several popular designs that are out there that do work and don't work, and some balance could work better. And among the things he mentions is insulating the balun from the boom, because booms, even though they're at right angles to the elements, very much can get into play. Boom resonance can get into play and give you all kinds of trouble. Oh, thanks for the comments on the cards. Yeah. Those are 6 meters, by the way, from California. Anyway, Justin has a lot of great information about balance and things like that, and any number of companies. If you just dig a little deeper on their websites, they not only will tell you the what, but the why. And the why is always a springboard for building your own, doing your own experimentation and learning.
Right.
And that's what ham radio is all about, is learning. And,
absolutely.
When you know everything, you'll know that you need to look at yourself in the mirror and you go, nah, I don't.
Yeah, exactly. Very good.
Yeah.
Well, this has been very helpful. I hope you guys have learned something today. Of course, that's the whole point. And as we mentioned, we could probably talk about antennas, into 2024 nonstop, but we only have so much time. And but thank you so much, Chip, for going through all these different antenna related issues today. And of course, you guys, if you have questions, feel free to keep posting them. And I'll keep an eye out, see if there's things that we can't answer. And I'm going to go in after we're done here and add a few more links to other things that we've talked about, especially some of the books, because that'll be, I think, helpful for you guys. So with that,
well, thanks so much for having me, Katie, and to everybody. I hope your antenna makes it through the winter. Of course, the old saying is, if it made it through the winter, it wasn't big enough. So
right.
But that's not necessarily true. You don't want to do it all over again.
Right.
You make it big enough and it blows down, then you'll make next year's even bigger, so it'll blow down again. And oh gosh, here we go. It's a never-ending cycle there. But thanks Thanks very much, and everybody out there, thanks for your kind comments. There's always something to learn, and
Sorry.
we'll see you on the air, and I'll see everybody in the California QSO party this year, K7JA stroke 6, so there's no confusion
Sounds
there.
good.
7s and 6s. Katie, it's over to you.
All
Thanks,
right.
everybody.
Thanks, Chip. And as I mentioned, I had a little announcement for all you guys. I wanted to let you know. And I want to do this at the beginning of the show and throw off all of the game. But I wanted to let everybody know that I really appreciate all of your support over, the past, actually about 6. I realize I've been in the ham radio industry or volunteering in a leadership capacity for about 16 years now. And it's time for me to go back to some of my roots of public service and working in the community. And so I want to let you guys know that this is my last Shack Chat because I'm leaving Ham Radio Outlet. I know you're probably shocked, like, how could I possibly ever leave Ham Radio Outlet? Believe me, it was a difficult decision, but I felt called to go back to, like I said, most of my career has actually been in government and nonprofits. And so I'm ready to return to that and return to my ham radio as just a hobby. And so I just want, I see a big what? I know what? Well, I didn't want to just disappear on you guys and everybody were like, hey, what the heck happened to Katie? So I want to let you know that Shack Chat will continue. There's just going to obviously be a little hiatus right now as things get changed around. And I'm not disappearing from the world. I'm just, got a new job. I mean, you guys could relate. Sometimes that just happens. And I'm really excited to going back to work for my county here and getting excited to, to be able to hopefully make a difference locally with some people that are really needing some help right now. So that's what I'll be doing. And thank you so much, you guys. It's been truly, I have to say, it was a dream of mine for a long time to work for Ham Radio Outlet. I mean, talk about like the pinnacle of places that you could work for. And I actually started on April Fool's Day 4 years ago, believe it or not. And didn't tell anybody for a little bit because I thought nobody's ever going to believe that I went to work for HRO when I tell them on April Fool's Day. So we always, we waited a little bit to announce it. But I've had so much fun and I've met so many of you guys and had a great time at conventions and ham fests and here on social media. And of course, I'll still be on social media and you can find me, just Google, just look for my call sign and I'll still be around. But again, thank you so much to Ham Radio Outlet for having me join the HRO family. I'll miss all of you guys so much. And I will, be nice and have fun with everybody that continues on. So don't disappear just because I'm not here. Because it's not about me, it's about this community. And I think that's one thing I'm really happy about is the community that we built here on Shack Chat. And thank you to everybody who's come on as my guest over the year, this past few months. It's been a lot of fun. And I look forward to seeing what's next. So for my last time, I'm going to say 73, everybody. And there's Chip. So 73, everybody, and stay radioactive. And I will see you down the log. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.